Hi, welcome to the UX Showcase for Release Progressive Delivery. I'm your host, Dimitrie Hoekstra. I'm the product designer for, of course, Progressive Delivery, but I'm also filling in for Verify Continuous Integration. Today's presentation will be about Progressive Delivery versus Continuous Delivery, and I'll go into that into a moment. Let's first check out a little bit as to where release is within the DevOps lifecycle. As you can see, after that your code has been created and it is verified in continuous integration, we arrive at package afterwards that's release. And release kind of takes care of that part of the development lifecycle where it is delivered towards your production. And release will do a bunch of things in order to improve that process and to mitigate risk. So I'll go into that in a little bit. To showcase the people working within this stage group, I have included this section, which is from the categories page. I invite you all to reach out to people as needed. The product manager is Orit, but there's a bunch of other people that we're working with in order to create this lovely part of the product. I want to highlight 4 of the categories that are inside of this stage group, which is continuous delivery, incremental rollout, review apps, and feature flags. And I'll go into that a little bit more detail in a little bit. So as I have shifted and moved over from from CI towards progressive delivery, it kind of made clear that CI/CD has gone a long way since the start. I've been with GitLab for quite some time, and when I started, CI just entered the product, and it has grown immensely and needed to re-familiarize myself with its direction and goals as I moved over to progressive delivery. So going back to that previous section of the category space of the progressive delivery group, we can see that one of the categories is called continuous delivery, while the title of the stage group is called progressive delivery. And I think there's a little bit of things to explain there. So how does this relate towards each other, right? So progressive delivery can be seen as the upgraded version of continuous delivery, where we previously went for CI/CD. After it was verified, we deliver it continuously to the production server. Progressive delivery takes care of that in terms of allowing for feature flags, which allow for immediate shut off and shut on of newly introduced changes, and in that way mitigating risk. But also it intends for incremental rollouts. And this is a combination of advanced deployments and observability. So as we have more granularity towards deployments or deployment strategies, we also want to harvest the data as to what is going on inside of that production environment. And lastly, I think this is the most important one, but I'll go into detail that a little bit into the next slide, is the ownership as to who is going to be able to control what is on and off, and what is going into production, who sees what, etc. So TLDR, allow for pushing deployments to production with zero risk. I think that is the most important part there. And this leads us into where do we want to go? What is the business vision? Where are we now, and where do we want to go? So we want to make feature flags the default for everyone. And this allows us, as I said before, to instantly shut off and shut on certain features. So if a certain changes makes something unwanted and creates a blocker inside of the production environment, we can easily shut that off. With rollout processes, which I defer to a later slide to, we can further add further granularity there. Observability, post-deployment processing, or post-deployment monitoring is one of the themes I'll go into and which we're working on in this milestone. But the most important thing about this slide is the change of ownership. So when you have progressive delivery set up for your organization, initially it will mostly be the developer that will be pushing things from production, from development to production. However, it is desired for that to be changed ultimately to, for example, the product manager, who knows best what they want at the beginning. So before they roll out a certain change, they probably have a hypothesis as to how the target audience is going to react, or how the services are going to react. If you're, for example, a platform engineer or release manager, and based on that, you might want to roll back. And the idea here is to give those personas a way for an implementer persona and a user persona. So how we're going to roll back towards production, who's going to make the changes towards which features are going to be active on it. So going on to the next one, what is in progress currently for progressive delivery? We have our Q2 goal issue, and that's going to focus on deploying to AWS and extending support for advanced deployments, which is part of that incremental rollout. So there's 3 things highlighted here. Before I go into that, we see that under advanced deployments, there's kind of like 4 themes going on. It is more than that, but I want to quickly highlight that. So blue-green deployments, it's an advanced strategy to allow for almost zero downtime between 2 identical environments and shifting the traffic from one to the next as we see fit. And with canary deployments, instead of rerouting all the traffic towards the new environment, we can show these, get a little bit of a sneak peek as to how that happens, or what happens when we reroute a subpart of our traffic towards that. And traffic vectoring kind of enables us to reroute a specific part of our traffic towards that, which allows for further granularity. A/B testing is kind of like a special part. It has roots in feature flags as well. But allows us, for example, as product designers to say, hey, we have 2 similar solutions, but we want to know which one is best. Let's set up 2 similar environments and then see, based on post-deployment monitoring, which one is going to be the superior one. And that leads us into 3 themes for Q2, which we're currently kind of in progress with, which is AWS deployments, A/B testing, and post-deployment monitoring, which I'll quickly dive into in the following slides. So AWS deployments, this is generated because there's a lot of buzz around AWS cloud deployments. We found out that this is currently very difficult to do. People need to be very technical in order to accomplish this, and we want to help out from a GitLab perspective. So to see what we have found out from the problem validation is that people want to be, want it to be easier to configure AWS. However, they don't want to interact with the AWS interface if possible. So with that, we've implemented previously to this that we offer AWS specific variables in our variable settings section. And to improve upon this, based on some insight here that says, hey, templates were seen as helpful, and we want to further guide people into deploying to the AWS from that interface, we're offering additional in-product guidance. So going into the next one, we see here that we're adding in a section, like a callout section in the add variable modal, that if a AWS type variable is set, we're allowing the user extra information to give them easier access to our documentation, and also pre-made templates, which was one of the insights coming out of that. So moving on to post-deployment monitoring. Very important for us to be able to react to things inside of that production environment after the rollout. There might be something wrong. We want to roll back. And from business goal, we've set out in terms of the problem validation, there's a few interviews still needed to be done, but mostly we're getting some early insights already figured out. We wanted to identify metrics used to define a successful or unsuccessful rollout, which metrics should be provided, and, where can users are going to be basing their decision matrix on, like, hey, do we want to automatically roll back, or do we want to manually roll back based on certain key metrics? So looking into what has gone on there, we have some early findings. It seems that both automatic and manual rollback methods are required, but some metrics we converge, like users converge to one of the two methods for some of them. So there's some patterns that are starting to sprout up there. As in terms of showing alerts, we're going to show alerts in 13.1 in the environments index page. The last insight you see here, users want to see threshold notifications on the pipeline itself. They want to see it within context. And we're going to aid them in that. And in 13.2 and 13.3, we're going to add additional controls for rolling back based on that data. So going into the next one, we can see a little bit of sneak peek where we cleaned up the environments list page. And if you have a Kubernetes environment active, it changes into the deployment overview. And you can see here that we have added an error rate exceeded notification if such a threshold has been exceeded. So moving on to A/B testing, this is starting up. Recruiting is to start in week 22, which is this week. And if we look at the job to be done, which is kind of interesting, when I have multiple solutions, I want to be able to test them and monitor key data variables so I can find a preferred method of moving forward. So a little bit more of a detailed way of this explaining what A/B testing is and what the user ultimately wants to do with that. And from our perspective as a business, we want to further our offering towards progressive delivery as part of our incremental rollout methods. I invite everyone to reach out into the document. There's source material everywhere. It's always nice if you want to have a little bit of a deeper dive. Lastly, for this slide, I want to highlight a little bit of the processes we have in place for progressive delivery. In terms of UXDEP, which has recently been added as the UX department performance indicators, I have been involved in making sure that we're using this tool to maintain the UXDEP and possibly decrease it. Additionally, I saw the opportunity there for UI polish to be included, which can benefit from the same treatment. So with this idea, I've expanded upon the triage reports, and the triage reports are kind of interesting. They've been introduced a while ago. I don't know if everyone is making use of them, but they're a really nice tool to make sure that we maintain the amount and the triaging of bugs, but also now UX depth and UI polish. For UX depth and UI polish, I've included heat maps and dedicated sections, at least for progressive delivery and continuous integration. We're kind of like making that a little bit of an experiment to see if that helps us helping to better aid PM into scheduling these kind of issues. Aside from that scheduling goal, we have an active goal to schedule at least one UX depth and one UI polish, if possible, each milestone, and that way decreasing and dwindling that amount. Lastly, inspired by release management, we've shifted over towards a neat UX review epic to aid us in planning. And I think this is kind of interesting how this functions aside from the planning issues and the engineering need weight issues, which is now being used across multiple stage groups. So the idea with needs UX review epic is that we have next to a needs weight issue, we have a specific needs weight issue or push discussion epic issue, doesn't really matter, for UX work, which is ahead of the curve instead of on the curve. So it allows for flexible issue weighting and pushing of pre-designed discussions outside of milestone buckets, but maintaining a grip on UX availability and making this transparent to also the product managers, see that we don't overload the product designer with too many discussions, diverting their attention. Lastly, it's interesting that this can also interact as one point of contact between UX and PM for non-scheduled items instead of like a multitude of items to keep track of, which is kind of hard to do within GitLab. And lastly, there's UX weighting that can be applied across the issues there to push discussion, but also make sure that issues are that we know what needs to be on done on them before they're actually implemented or assigned to a certain milestone. There's a little call out here. UX waiting can be approved in GitLab. I would love to know how others are doing their UX waiting. So there's a little Slack thread with a poll. Please click through on the slides and it will end up in the UX channel. You can also find it directly in the UX channel. It was posted today, but the request is there to vote and to potentially leave a little bit of feedback around your process towards UX waiting. Thank you so much, and feel free to reach out to me in progress delivery. Thank you so much.